On to step 16, and here we go, putting the components into the main chassis. So we're going to need the bathtub style chassis, which is this plastic part, which is in its own bag. Try saying bathtub style chassis when you've had a few. Then we need from the plastic trees D1, which is this piece, which is the holder for the receiver. We're also going to need this E4 piece, and we're going to need the receiver that we're going to put into our model. We're also going to need our servo and arms that we built in step 15. And again, from parts bag B, we're going to need the 3x21mm screws. We need 4 of those. We need 2 of the BB4s, which are the 3x12mm self-tapping screws. We're going to need 1 of these 3x10mm self-tapping screws. We're going to need a 3mm washer, and we're going to need this hexagonal mount. And we need to put all those components into our chassis. So on this step, the instructions talk about mounting the D1 tray, which is the tray that holds your receiver, into the chassis like this, and with your receiver in the top, and screwing this through using the 3x21mm screws. So I'm looking at the possibility, because I've popped this E4 in place with the 3x10mm screw already, but my school of thought here is that my receiver is quite small. It's the Fly Sky receiver, so quite small. When it talks about this wrapping around and coming up through the aerial tube, my thoughts were whether or not this could be mounted underneath underneath this tray, because when I pop this in, and even with my fat fingers placing that into place on the chassis, I've still got plenty of room here underneath for my cables and things to go in, and maybe this location I could use for the speed controller, just to neaten everything up. So that's my thought processes. So I'm going to pop this tray in sort of without the receiver in place at the moment, and then see how I get on in the next step. So here we go, we're just going to pop this tray in and just bring these screws just down so that they're nipped up. Don't have to go too mad, because we are probably going to take this back off again to see how we fit our electronics in at a later stage. But I'm just using my Tamiya large screwdriver just to pop that in place and screwing that in place. So that effectively will be your receiver tray for the model. It's quite simple, as long as you get onto the head properly. Okay, so that bit's in, and we need to now put in our servo with our linkages into the front of here using the 2 3x12mm self-tapping screws, 1 of the 3mm washers. So just pop in the hexagonal mount into the place. There we go. There we are. It doesn't have to get too mad, just so it's nipped up. There we go, done. And last but not least on this step is popping the servo into position and screwing your servo through. So on turning this up the other way around, one of the holes is here. This you pop through, and then on the other hole, which is an elongated hole, you use one of the 3x12mm screws with a 3mm washer. The idea of the elongated hole is that different servos, different sizes, so you can use different ones. So again, just nip that up so it's nipped up tight, and that's all you have to do here. Nice and gentle. Just keep it going until it stops, and then a quarter turn. Like that. There we go. Tight. Tight. There we go. And that's your servo in place. And that will be step 16, which is now completed. So you've got your servo in the front. As you can see here, I've popped my Fly Sky receiver underneath this tray. This tray will sit on top of the chassis in here and actually screw down into the chassis in here, and this will actually house then the electronic speed controller where the receiver would be, just so that I can keep everything nice and neat and route the wires and fold the wires underneath the tray, so they'll go underneath the tray like so, and it's all nice and neat and nice and safe. So that's what we're doing next on here, and we'll get this finished and screwed in. So there we are, that's the electronic speed controller on top, and the receiver, if you can see, move the switch out of the way, okay, and the receiver underneath there, and wires all nicely tucked underneath, all nice and safe. So now I've got to mount the switch, which is the next thing. Mount the switch in here, and a little bit tidy of cables for the rest of the chassis, and then we'll carry on. For step 17, we need some more screws out of the bag B. So we need 4 of the BB1s, which are the 3 by 10mm screws, which are over here. We need 2 of these 2 by 8mm screws, which are here. We need 4 of the 3mm nuts, which are here. We need 2 of these washers, which are the 2mm washers, which are here. And we need a couple of parts from the tree, D2 parts, so D2, we need 2 of those, so those there. We need our chassis, which we've got here, and as you can see, I've sort of kind of gone ahead and popped my receiver and electronic speed controller into my chassis already, but we need to fix the switch into place on this section down here. You get the switch put into there, and that'll be step 17 sorted, so I'll get on with that. So for step 17, we need to put these little nuts into position in the chassis. I don't know that I can pick that out on camera at all, but I'll try it. There we go. So we're just going to slide these into place, so they're in place. And the same again with this other one. So we're just trying to maneuver this in place. There we go, that's in place. I put my fingers over the top just to hold them in place. And then what we need to do is we need to take one of our BB1s, our 3 by 10mm, and this cap, and we need to screw this into place and just get a few threads on it. So it's got a few threads. There we are. I can feel that with my fingers at the other side, and again on this one here. There we go, and screw that into place. So again, make sure they're nice and tight. So nice and tight, plus a quarter turn, and it's just, I've done the other side already, and it's a case of, there we go, quarter turn, quarter turn. There we are, that's now tight. And then we need, so that's nicely fixed in. And then we need to screw the switch into place. So for screwing the switch into place, I place the switch in this position. I'm using the same screws that came with the switch, just put the washers on and the little indicator for on and off. And I tend to put the on in the position so as the car's going forward, the switch is in the on position. I mean, not that anything's going to hit it, but just in case. And just tighten the screws into place. And that is the switch then installed, and just a quick test to make sure that it works. That is 17 complete. We are now on step 18, and on step 18 we need some more components from the parts tree, namely B10. So this is a rear upright, and we also need some of these 3 by 12mm screws, BB4s. This is out of bag C, so we're now on bag C. And so I have those here, and they're all ready to go. and we need our chassis that we've been building and the finishing steps that we've done on step 17. So there's our chassis, and you can see slightly different layout. I've done the electronic speed controller on top of the plate here, and my receiver is underneath, and I've tidied my wires underneath so that you can, I don't know if you can pick that out on camera, so they're kind of underneath here, so it's nice and neat. So these are chassis nice and neat. So we get on now with step 18, and that's attaching this top piece for the brace on top, for the mounts for the suspension systems, and the gearbox. So our V10 part, it quite simply sits on the chassis, and it lines up with these sections here that line up with these sections here. So it literally just locks itself into place, and then we screw down with 4 screws to hold it in place. So just to show you how that goes in, so the mounting bracket goes on, and we screw this through, and it's a case of just using the 4 screws and screwing that into place, like so. I'm just holding that in place. It's held in place now. This is now done. There we go. Yes. And again, don't go too mad. Just literally tight. In this case, I can't do a quarter turn. I can only literally do tight and almost like an 1/8 of the turn. So it's done. That's nice and tight. There we are. And now that's this bit. We now need to pop the gearbox on and our wiring on. So that will go through, the wiring actually goes through the little hole. The little hole here. The wiring actually goes through those little holes, if you can see here where my finger is, and we can tidy up the wiring. So let's bring the gearbox into place and put that onto the model. So gearbox goes into place, and it's literally, I can show you this, so it's side on. This back section here locates here on the back of the chassis, which is this section here. That locates, and it literally locates like that. And you've got the top section locates there. And we're going to put the 2 screws in the top. That's what we're going to do. And that's what we're doing now. Just screwing these fully home. And again, just the same as we did with the uprights. So screw and an 1/8 of the turn. There we go. Screw and an 1/8 of the turn. Nice and tight. And then we've got to route the cabling through. And so whether you have a brush or brushless system, it depends on whether you use the 2 or the 3 out of these cables. We're going to be using 2 because we've got the standard 540 motor. I think I might need to resolder these because I don't like the way this sticks right out here. I might turn these around a bit for neatness, so I'm going to do that and tidy up the wiring. So just recapping where we are now on step 18. So we've popped in the upright and screwed that through with these screws here, and again on the other side, and we've tidied up the cabling out from the speed controller to the motor, and I've just moved these wires, I've turned them round so they are a little bit more neater, and they come through the hole like that. So I've left the orange one there just in case I change to a brushless. You never know, I might do. Make it a bit more speedy, but that is step 18 now complete. So we now have that all in place. We're now on step 19, and step 19, we need another part from parts tree D. This is the rear guard for the gearbox and motor. This is going to go in place across here, and we're going to secure that using 3 of the BB4 screws from the bag C, which are the 3 by 12mm screws. And it's a simple case now of popping this in place. We need to line up the holes here so it all nicely lines, and we're going to need to line up this hole here, which is quite easily done, and we need to screw this together and make this all nice and secure. So I'm going to pop one screw in. I'm just going to get a couple of threads. There we go. And I tend to line up the screws, put the screws in place with just a couple of windings, just to hold them in place. There we go. There we are. And it's a case now screwing all this tight. There we are. There we go. So it's tight plus a quarter turn. That's my philosophy. There we go. Nice and tight. So that's step 19 completed. So for step 20, we need the front section that we built in earlier steps. So we need our front suspension system and our front arms here. We also need from parts tree N and N1, which will go on the front here. And we need an assortment of screws from our bag C. A couple of the BC3s, which are these longer ones. Just offer them up to the drawing to make sure. They're dark coloured, so there they are, the more black colour type screw. And then we've got our BB4s. We need 2 of those, 3 by 12mm. Incidentally, these were 3 by 15. And then we need also the BA4s, which are 3 by 10. There we go. So there's 2 parts for step 20. And we need to pop the N1 into place using the 3 by 10mm screws, which we do here. And this is quite a simple case of screw these in and away we go. So I've done one side, just pop that on. There we go. Again, don't go mad with this because you just want it tight and a quarter turn because it's fairly soft plastics. And then we now pop and screw this to the main chassis and pop on our steering arms here and here. And the drawing says to make sure you get a little bit of towing in. Using the longer of the screws, the 3 by 15mm, going down into the top here, and we use the slightly shorter 3 by 12mm screws on the underneath of the chassis. Underneath there. So that's quite a simple step. We'll get that into place and get that screwed together. So this is the underneath with the 3 by 12mm screws. Popping those in place like so. Again, tight plus a quarter turn. And we'll turn over and do the other side. And this is the top section where we're popping in and screwing nice and tight the 3 by 15mm screws into the top section to the front of the car. So that's all in and nice and tight. There we go. And the last little step is pop on the ball joints so that they're in place. There we go. That's one. And not forgetting the other side. There we are. And I think we've got a little bit of toe in, which is perfect. There we go. That's step 20 complete.